In this episode, we are going to be reviewing Rocco and His Brothers, the Italian classic film from 1960. This was directed by Luchino Visconti. This film is with Alain Delon, Renato Salvatori, Annie Giradot, Claudia Cardinale, Caterina D'Amic. It is an incredible large ensemble cast. I have reviewed the film before, but it was a very short review, and I want to do a much deeper review. This is one of my favorite films, and I have a new guest this time around, so stick around. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore movies from all over the world and talk about how those stories were told on film. I want to welcome back my guest, Lucia Grillo, who is an actress, filmmaker, TV host, and correspondent, TV producer, and voiceover artist. As an actress, she has appeared in Summer of Sam, directed by Spike Lee with Mira Sorvino and John Leguizamo, Duplicity with Julia Roberts and Clive Owen, HBO's The Undoing with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant. Her narrative and documentary films have won awards and been official selections of festivals such as Cannes Film Festival, SFC, and AFI, among many others. And she currently produces and hosts Lucia's Vegan Lifestyle, which you can catch on MNN. Lucia, welcome back. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be back with you, Robert. Thank you.
I know we touched on this just before we started recording, but do you remember the first time you saw this film?
Yeah, I actually saw it, let's say, recently. I think it must have been in 2015 when the restored version came out. And does this film leave a lasting impression?
Oh my God, yeah.
Every time I watch it, it devastates me.
Me too.
It's just devastating.
It's so emotional and true and operatic and dramatic, and I mean Visconti's like that in general, but this one always hits me the hardest.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's just last time we talked about one of my perfect films, and this is on my perfect film list because it hits all of the marks. The screenwriting, the development of the story and the screenwriting, which I'll talk about, the production, locations, and design, which they had issues with the locations, with permissions because of the subject matter, the direction, of course, the acting by unknowns and relative unknowns. Impeccable, so personal, so felt, right? So lived.
Absolutely.
The cinematography, the editing, the score, and of course for me, the politics.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We in this film, it's very well, I suppose it has quite a heavy plot, and it also has a deep psychological exploration of multiple characters. So, what do you take away from the film? Like, what do you see the essence of the story being about?
I think it's about several things that separately, but then that function intertwined to make that, that explosive impact. And these are things that we see in our society today, right? This is the 60th anniversary of the film, by the way, right?
Yes. 62.
62 now, 62, that's right. That's right. So I think it is about poverty and immigration, racism, survival versus thriving, and majorly about masculinity. And let's say, I don't like this term toxic masculinity, but toxic masculinity, and how all of those previously mentioned categories and themes heighten the effects of that toxic masculinity, and then cause men and boys to be, bring them to these points of violence. So that's what I think it's about.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I imagine when you talk about the toxic masculinity nature, anyone who sees the film, I'm sure right away you'll think of Simone, who's just hits rock bottom and becomes disgusting and evil. And we see him early in the film as they get to Milan, so innocent, and suddenly he is totally self-destructive. And what I love about a film like this, or really good movies is in general, is that there's no simple answer for why that happens. It's not like Visconti or the screenwriters spoon-fed, this is why he is now going this. I mean, there are definitely suggestions, but I was curious, why do you feel he just turned into this monster of a man?
I think it's a number of things. And in a way, I think in a way also, I think we pity him. He is disgusting
Yes.
and violent, right? Because we see the development. We see how a person, like, I'm going to cry. It's just, this film is just,
Oh, I don't blame you.
we see people like this today,
Yeah.
no matter what country you're in. That's why it's still very relevant. That's why it hit me so hard, is because I've known people like this.
Yeah.
So when you take someone like that, right, he's innocent, naive, even brutish, right, in this kind of, like, let's say, innocent animal. Humans are animals, so
Right.
in this innocent kind of provincial or like rural way that has not been exposed. A main theme for Visconti in this, I'll bring it up now, that there is a beautiful a beautiful video available on YouTube. I will share the link with you. That is an hour-long talk by Caterina D'Amic, who she had been the head of the Luchino Visconti archives. So in 2015, during the Cinema Ritrovato at the Cineteca di Bologna, she gave a very detailed talk about the development of the story. So for Visconti, it was very important. The central theme, according to what D'Amico says, Caterina D'Amico, was that it was very important to show how the city corrupts. And I don't think he meant just the city itself, but all of the elements. When you take these immigrants who have hope, right? They're like the salt of the earth. They have these dreams and hopes that when they come to the big city, it will just be work and, their hard work. I get so emotional. Their hard work.
No, I don't blame you. I know what you mean.
Their hard work. Well, I think this is what Visconti wanted. I think their hard work, will lead to a better life. But then they're bombarded.
Yeah.
And Nadia is the embodiment, even though she also has her story. It was important to Visconti that the woman that he encounters be the embodiment of corruption. So right. The corruption of this, I guess Visconti was, tied to the Communist Party. So for me, it's a commentary on capitalism and how brutal it is. Yeah. Right. With all of those elements that serve it, the racism.
Yes.
When they first arrive, there's the scene at the beginning that the portiera, the building concierge or building porter, says to a neighbor, they pass there just arriving with the whole family, the Signora Rosaria Parondi and the 5 men and boys. They're arriving into the building, as the Southern Italian immigrants, who, by the way, Italian immigrants had to apply for immigration to the North at that time. Oh,
wow. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Wow. You would think,
they say it in the film. She says it in the film.
I must have missed that. That's interesting.
So, so she says Africa. Like that, with this contempt. And the neighbor says, where are they from? And she goes, Lucania. Yeah. With this nasty and they don't even know. And the neighbor says, Lucania, where's it? I've never heard about it. Yeah. And then she says, something that's poignant as well to this country, not only to Italy, but anywhere, that people like them will apply for citizenship and they'll get it.
Right.
So this is, emblematic of the racism in Italy, not only of the time, but now as well.
Yeah. Oh God.
So,
Yeah.
so I think all of these elements, they're felt. We think that men are these unfeeling beings, but because society has not permitted men to express their fears and that this is what happens,
Yes.
especially in that position for mainly Rocco and Simone, not Vincenzo, because he's clearly self-absorbed, maybe not wrongfully, right? Because he is the new immigrant who's pursuing what he's supposed to.
Right.
But with the death of their father, it falls on them to be the man of the house.
Right.
So there's so much in this story.
There really is.
Causes, and it was very carefully thought out. It's none of the elements of this story are, let's say, casual, or it was very carefully written to show how this could happen to each of these characters. Yes. Right? Each of the writers, there were 6 writers of this. There was one writer assigned to each character for the screenplay.
I didn't even know that.
Yes.
Wow. Well, so no wonder they're also distinctive. You can see how much care went into each part.
Yeah.
The smallest of parts,
all of them. Even Nadia, she's a supporting character, but she is, they did a lot of research. They read the Cronache Nere, which is crime news, to try to find her story. So in the end, she was based on the female character in The Idiot, which is
the Dostoevsky film, the book, Dostoevsky book. Yeah,
she was based on Nastasia, and a lot of this story is based on Il Ponte della Ghisolfa, which was a book that had several different novellas or stories within it. Right. So a lot of Nadia was taken from those 2 elements.
Yes.
And what happened to her in the film, the story she tells, because she also has a background, which is really important to know why Rocco and his abandonment of her is so devastating. It's because he was the second man that she ever loved in her life. Her father being the first. And when he got sick and was hospitalized, she was left to her own devices, was groomed by an older man that she had an affair with at 13. And that shaped her entire existence from 13 until we meet her. She's 24 or so?
25. Well, yeah, I guess she'd be 20. Yeah, 4, because she says she's 20. She says she's 25 when she comes out of jail, which was already a year into the story, or a year after we see her, anyways.
Right.
Yeah. It's so tragic, and even though every character is so flawed, it's done with the utmost empathy. I mean, even Rocco, for as saint-like as he is, he's very flawed, because he cannot let go of his ideals. And as Cheeto says at the end to the little brother, he's so good, but he puts his goodness in the wrong places.
Exactly.
And that's what I love so much about the film, is that there's no judgment of these people. I mean, it's certainly showing that they have many flaws, and are particularly Simone is incredibly brutal and turns into this monster, but he really shows you why that is the case. But at the same time, as I was saying, nothing is truly spoon-fed, like some kind of simple motivation or simple answer, because as life is never like that. We can never just say this is because of this or this is because of that. I mean, sometimes sure, but people are just so complicated that there are so many possibilities. Um, the the thing with Lucia is she is such a fascinating character to me.
Thank
And
you, Robert. But I think you mean Nadia.
oh my god.
I am
both of you.
Flattered.
Yeah, both Lucia and Nadia. Sorry, I don't know. Just for some reason.
You think I'm a hoe? Is that what it is? You
Oh
think
God,
I'm a hoe?
never.
I'm just...
Never.
I can't stop laughing.
Yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
we'll have to
Take
keep
two.
that in for a bit of a humor for the audience there. What I love so much about her character is the scene with Rocco, when he went into the army, and then he comes out, and they bump into each other, and she had done some stretch in jail for, you don't know exactly what she did. I mean, she was a prostitute, so something criminal, or that she got put in jail for. And what I love about that scene with her and Rocco is that she tells him that she's been in prison, and he doesn't judge her. He doesn't like put her down or call her a putana, a whore. Because I imagine most of the men that she had encountered were either just it was transactional relationship, just using her for sex, or they were abusive towards her, like the man who was grooming her since she was 13, as you mentioned. And he just listens. It's almost like Jesus and Mary and oh
Magdalene.
God.
Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, Mary Magdalene. It's almost like just
leave it to the atheist to know.
Yeah. he was just so compassionate, and he doesn't judge, and then at the he gives her this like innocent advice that she kind of chuckles about, and then he opens up about his own life and how he misses home and he doesn't like the city, and then you just see this tear come out of her eye, and I just thought that's so interesting, and I imagine that she loved him, started to fall in love with him probably immediately, because he was treating her like no other man had, just with this respect and this he was attentive, he was compassionate. How did you feel about that scene? I thought that was such a pivotal moment in this film.
I love it, yeah, because both of them, it's really the first time that we also see him as well being listened to, and because usually we see him in the context of his brothers.
That's true.
Right, and what he's doing with them and for them. So this is the first time we see him independent, right, embarking on his own life. So for both of them, that's a moment where, obviously pivotal, where they each finally have an opportunity to be looked at, right, and considered as a human being, as individually, and not as functioning what their service is to others.
That's a good point, because even he is also, everything he is doing is for the family and out of duty and obligation and survival. And in her case, everything she is doing is for out of she has to survive, she has to provide, and so they can just suddenly be vulnerable and open up to each other. I love that scene. Every time I think of this film, that's one scene I always think about. And then of course that brutal scene where she's raped by Simone, and Rocco is held back, and there's nothing he can do about it, as he tries to, he's screaming out to Simone to stop. And it's hard to watch, even 62 years later. I mean, it's emotionally, it's not even that it's so graphic. I mean, it is graphic, but it's not that he was it wasn't as if Visconti was showing the zooming in on the actual rape. Exactly. It was
like
more
pornography, pornifying it. Yeah,
exactly. It was the way in which everyone was responding. I mean, you even see the guys holding Rocco back suddenly stop, and they're like, oh my God, you know, what are we doing, or what have we done? And Simone, like I said, I mean, you see him so innocent in the film, and suddenly he gets to the city, and he starts to, you know, he gets some popularity as a boxer. He starts to win. He's making money. And for me, it was that moment when he goes and visits Rocco, where Rocco was working with all those women at that laundry, yeah, laundrette, and he steals the shirt, and that's when suddenly, you know, we start to see this self-destructive behavior just get worse and worse and worse
I
and
think it happens
worse.
before that.
You think
The
even
moment,
before that?
yeah, the moment it happens for me is when he wins the first fight and Nadia's waiting for him, and Morini is in the car, his manager, who's going to launch his career. And he walks right past because he
Oh yeah,
prefers the
yeah,
immediate gratification to
right.
the hard work and dedication that it will take,
Oh, that's a
right?
good point.
The
Yeah.
commitment that it will take. Maybe also, I'm not sure if he senses, right? Because there's also the theme of homosexuality. Morini is gay. So I don't think that Simone
Oh
senses
yeah,
that,
that's
right? Because
interesting.
there's again the theme of grooming.
Right.
Morini is attracted to Simone from the second he lays eyes on him. And he knows, he reveals later, he can tell his character from that moment, from that
Right.
first moment. And he says later on, I knew it would be you eventually who would be asking to come to me, right? He could tell his character from the beginning, and he was grooming him. I don't think he really believed in him as much as a fighter, because he even says, you know, he comments on the fact that he's not the best fighter, that he's not disciplined. But I think there's a little bit of grooming having, that's not to be with homosexuality.
Right.
You know,
I know what you
that's a
mean. Yeah.
separate thing, just for viewers to be clear. But Morini is this kind of shady, is a very shady character. And I guess with, you know, with the fact of homosexuality being illegal at the time in Italy, right? There is a lot of, there's a latency. But Morini is a predator,
Mm-hmm.
and predators choose their victims, right? They know who they can victimize, or they have a sense of who they can victimize. So I don't think that Simone senses that. I think it's his, because he, you know, he's this undeveloped ego. Right, nowadays we talk a lot about narcissistic personality disorder, and it's
Right.
used kind of cheaply, right? Oh, you're a narcissist, you're a narcissist, right?
Yeah.
But it's a serious thing. And I think that Simone is an undeveloped ego, right? He's
Yes.
basically like an infant. He has not matured to the point of being responsible for his actions. He wants what he wants when he wants it. The idea of a woman being an object, if he wants her, she's going to take. Even Vincenzo says at the beginning to
Yes.
Ginetta, right? When a
Yes.
man wants something, when a man wants a woman, he has to take her, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Excuse me." And I
Yes.
don't think Vincenzo means it like that. I think he means that they decided they wanted to be married, so it's not up to the brothers to give permission.
Yes.
But I think in that way as well, that masculine thing. And then to Simone, Nadia is not a human being. She is
Right.
an object that he wants to possess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. You actually mentioned some things that I didn't, it didn't dawn on me that was that his Simone's manager had these sexual attraction towards him, and now in hindsight that actually makes sense, because I was wondering, particularly later when he brings him back to his apartment and they get into this fight, and then you find out that he's been giving all of this money to Simone and that he owes him like 400,000 lire. And I did for a second think, well, he was been trashing this guy, you know, for although he's been saying he's not disciplined, and you know, and I was like, well, then why are you doing this? And actually, that makes sense. Even the way in which when he was blinking his car lights on, and trying to get his attention as he was walking away with Nadia, and you do see that he's kind of like, why is he coming out with me? And I was like, oh,
he
yeah, that's
feels slighted. Yeah, he
Yeah.
feels slighted, not only as a manager, but
Yes.
more as a man who's attracted to somebody. And yeah,
That's
the scene, that's what he says to him in the bar. I knew that eventually it would be you, or maybe he says it in the house. I knew it would be eventually you who would come to me.
Right.
And that scene, they're supposed to have sex.
Yeah, because it feels that. Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering, I'm like, why is he bringing him to his place? I'm like, and then that
when he
I must be naive not to have picked up on that. That's yeah. And
but there's so much in the film that it's
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
There's so much in the film that it's very easy to miss some nuances. You know, that's why like every time I watch it, I'm like this. You know,
well that's the great thing about a great work of art is that you'll constantly be seeing things. I remember seeing Visconti in an interview when he was promoting The Damned in 69, and he was saying he was actually talking to a film critic, and he was saying you have to see a movie more than once. And then she was baffled. You would think a film critic, why would that baffle you? She was like, why would I watch something more than once? And he's like, because then you'll get more of the details every time. And I was, yeah, he's absolutely right. But yeah, there's constant discoveries in this one. You had mentioned Claudia Cardinale earlier. That's the one thing in this film that I wish there was more of, was her, because I just love her in everything I've seen her in. She's just really just stands out like no one else. I mean, I'm not just saying because she was very beautiful, but just she has also that sense of innocence too. Like it's no wonder that in 8.5 Fellini picked her to be the angelic one. I mean, she just has this, when she smiles, she just beams, I mean, but she's tough at the same time. But the first scene, it's probably one of the few moments of humor in the film, because when you see her and her family, and then, she's engaged to Vincenzo, and then of course his family now come from the south to Milan. I love right away the fights just start. She's like, hey, we don't have enough space for you here. Like, what are you gonna do tonight? And he's like, oh, my son will never leave me out on the street. And then before you know it, this fight breaks out, and she barely even said hello to his fiance. It's kind of like, the daughter's not the daughter, my son's fiance, that wariness or
but even like the assimilation, right? They've made it.
Yeah.
And now they've forgotten where they came from, which was not that long ago.
Yeah.
And now these people, right? The same people they were. That's what I got from that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was wondering why. I was like, wait a minute, why are they treating them like outsiders? Because they are from the same, I don't know if they were from the exact same town, but they were definitely, from the south. And they seem to almost be teasing them and belittling them a little bit. I just, it's kind of like we've integrated. And now, but
also the brothers, right? The brothers are against the wedding because they think that they'll have to support Ginetta and Vincenzo. Right? And now with the whole family coming, there's the threat of, because they're family, well, they have to take care of them too. So that's why immediately, it's all, that's the whole, the threats of this socioeconomic situation that capitalism puts us in. And I know Visconti wanted to say that because, it's so, when you said earlier that it's not easy to see where these issues of the characters and their development and what the point to which they're brought, it is very easy to get to the root for me. I think that because Visconti was so deliberate about what he wants to say, and then there's a lot in here, right? That's where the difficulty comes in. But the socioeconomic situation, doesn't lend itself, sadly, in our society to help each other and to altruism. It's
Right.
the dog eat dog, even when it's,
Your own people.
family to
Yeah.
be, your own people. Yes, exactly. Your
And
own
you
people.
certainly see that today. I mean, without naming any names, like I know people who are immigrants and then will, call people trying to get into the States right now illegals,
Exactly.
and I'm like, they're
Exactly.
humans,
Yeah.
and I'm like, you're an immigrant.
Yeah.
Like, how can
Yeah.
you? And
Yep.
it's, this lack of empathy or understanding of, oh well, we came legally and they're just trying to get in. It's like, yeah, but they're in a different situation. They're running from literally someone putting a knife to their head right now. You can't just wait in line for some papers all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like,
And
it's
even
not
if
that
it
simple.
wasn't that dire, even if it's just even if it's just the same circumstances that same immigrant who's now, hating on the other immigrant trying to come here, just the fact that we live in a world that people have to leave. This is a huge theme in this.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
leave
Huge.
I'm gonna cry. They have to leave their land.
Yeah.
He says, "Rocco at the end." Remember, I'm gonna cry because it reminds me so much. My mother loves Calabria,
Yeah.
right? That nostalgia, even though times were not the best. The life was more, at least like kind of more simple when they were
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
And Rocco says at the end, it's heartbreaking. Okay, so this is the scene where Cheeto goes to give the speech, but he's forgetting the dialect,
Right.
right? Which is it's so poignant. It's so symbolic of forgetting where you came from. And there's positives and negatives to that, right? The
Right.
forgetting where you came from, in the positive, that you're now, let's say a new person who's living this new life, but also that, they left their dead father behind, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of this is happening because of the death of the father. This is all happening because of the death of the father. Otherwise, they would have still been down there.
Yes. Yes.
So Rocco he says he hopes that he himself or one of them, maybe Luca, will return home someday. And then he says, Luca, remember, ours is the land of olive trees, of moon sickness, the land of the rainbow.
Yeah. So beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah. There was a metaphor he used. It was interesting because he used a certain metaphor about how you have to. I should have written it down, but maybe you remember that when you're building a house,
on
it's
the
sometimes
rock.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Like,
So basically, yeah,
what was it again?
he says, Vincenzo, I think he says to Vincenzo, remember that, I think it was a neighbor of theirs said, when you're building a house, you have to throw a rock at the shadow of the first person who passes. And this is kind of also a premonition. And then they say, why? And Rocco says, because to build, I think I did write it down. Hold
Oh,
on a
good,
second.
good.
Yeah, I did. You have to throw a rock at the shadow of the first person who passes. Why? Because a sacrifice must be made so that the house may be built solidly.
That's exactly. And that very much that metaphor very much had such an impact on how he lived his life, because he was the one, was basically the sacrifice so that this as he sees it, that this house can be stable. And then Cheeto is very interesting character to me, because there's that great scene earlier where Rocco says, oh, I love this scene because he says, we were so close at home. And
Yeah.
then Cheeto also has a similar metaphor of something he learned at home. And maybe you remember, but it was something about, I think something about the fruit they picked, and that, something, if it was bad, you threw the ones that were bad away. And of course, he's talking about Simone. We have to, this guy he's a bad seed and we cannot help him anymore. And Rocco is just, again, because of the way in which he sees life that he learned from home, he feels that it is his duty to help no matter what. So what's so fascinating with these two ways of looking at life is like, you know, on the one hand, there were a lot of problems at home, and coming here solved some, but led to, you know, perhaps worse ones in their case.
Right, this is an immigrant story, Robert.
Yeah, for
Even though they're
sure.
in the same country, right? Italy wasn't unified until what, 1890?
Yeah,
So by
yeah,
1958, 57, 58, it was still a new country. So it's still today. People are
yeah.
like, you go to Calabria and you can't find food. I'm like, vegans,
Right.
not everybody. I'm like, you can't find vegan food. So, you know, or like, I've been to Calabria to the beach. You've been to Calabria to the beach, but they know nothing
Right.
about the culture, the people, nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why are you going to Calabria? Stay away, stay away
Yeah.
from my place. But you know, they know nothing because that racism is so ingrained.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's an immigrant story, even though it's in the same
Oh, yeah.
country.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating to me about it, because even though they're going within the same country,
Mm-hmm.
it's still as if they were going to the furthest place away, you know. And it's very much whether, you know, you're going to Canada or you're going to America. You're right. It is how, and Visconti's films, most of them explore this theme of how things change through movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see that in The Leopard as well. It's when times change, how that makes things better in some ways and worse in others. You know, and in their case, you know, economically speaking, yes, they're much better off. But look at what's happened to them as a result of making this move. You know, again, I don't think it's as simple as the fact that they moved, and so this is why Simone became this way. There was obviously something wrong with him in a lot of ways that perhaps again wouldn't have happened if they had not moved, because he would have just lived a very, you know, survival driven, you know, simplistic, innocent way of life. But
he might have also brutalized whichever woman he selected back in Lucania.
That's true. Yeah, you never,
You know?
exactly. So it could have happened even at home. But there's something, you know, Cheeto to me was one of the smartest characters, because he says something at, you know, he has that conversation with his youngest brother at the end, and he says, you know, it may seem, he says something along the lines of, hey, it may seem like that I hated Simone, but I actually loved him more than anyone, and I learned the most from him, because he said we should not have been treated like slaves at home, and we you know, that this ungrateful land that we lived in, and we should basically have more freedom and be able to live and prosper. And then he says, well, he basically came here and forgot that. And I had wondered, because guilt is a big part of this film, and I had wondered perhaps that was a clue that Simone maybe he felt he didn't deserve the success he was getting. You know, maybe he felt that all this, the women and the money and the boxing, maybe he just thought, part of him, maybe because of all the prejudice he was experiencing from the Northerners, maybe he just thought, you know what, I'm just some dumb hick, you know, that I don't deserve this. Because even Rocco, in that great scene that he has with Nadia right after the rape scene, and it's so shocking to think that he tells her to go back with Simone even after getting raped. He's like, Simone, and he blames himself. It's like, I didn't know that he loved you this much, or else I wouldn't have fell in love with you, and I wouldn't have started this relationship, and then he wouldn't have raped you. It's almost as if he blames himself.
Yeah, absolutely. He says it at the end too.
Yeah.
When Simone comes back, he says it was all my fault.
Yes. And you know, as being brought up with, you know, Southern Italian heritage, guilt is a major part of their DNA. Sometimes when I see my parents, they fall into guilt so easily, and I do as well. And I'm, you know, it's like, you shouldn't feel this guilty. I mean, this is not, you know,
Yeah.
over something like this. And Rocco should certainly not. And even the mother, I mean, she has that great scene with Chiro when everything is going downhill with, worse and worse with Simone, and she says, maybe this is my fault, and he's trying to tell her that it isn't. It's just that fascinated me. That I don't know if
Yeah, it
I'm
makes so
sure
much
that stood out to you
sense.
as well.
It makes so much sense because, it's like, can we catch a break, right? Like she says, there's a few things here that you brought up, and there's something that I want to bring up about Chiro within
Yeah.
within the arc of the story. But she says, for 25 years with your father, I implored him to leave,
Yes.
and he wouldn't.
Right.
And she that's the same thing that we were saying before, that like here, immigrants were shocked, literally, earnestly shocked to find that the streets of America are not paved with literal gold.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
Because when people told them that, they didn't know it was a metaphor. Some people believed it.
Mm.
Or even the metaphor, right? A streets paved with gold, you will want for nothing. And when you want for nothing, when you're not toiling just to survive, that means you can actually thrive.
Yes. Yeah.
But the conditions of our society are such that even when you're not just surviving or fighting to survive economically, the societal, impositions or the conditions of our society, of class and race and gender, all of those things combine, to create problems that they hadn't thought of.
Right.
So
Right.
for Rosaria, it was just, we finally go, we're going to have a better life. We work hard, we're going to have a better life, right? They were so happy to shovel snow
Oh yeah, that
because they were
early
going to be
scene. Yeah.
earning,
They were gonna get paid. Yeah.
and so yeah, and that guilt, right? She's the mother.
Yeah.
What else? What other purpose does she have in this world? She has nothing else but her children. That's her
Exactly.
entire purpose.
That's their whole
She's not
life,
out
right?
having
Yeah.
fun. She doesn't have a job. She
Yep.
is the mama. Those are her 5 sons. So if the one thing that she could give them besides life, right? The one thing she could give them to have the life that she dreamed for them went wrong. Did
Yes.
she fail?
Yes. Yeah.
Or what was it?
Right.
What was it? And
Right.
she doesn't even blame her children. She
No.
says Rocco has the malocchio. Simone, she says it. Simone is on. Simone has that puttana. Rocco, somebody must have given him the malocchio. She says this.
Yeah.
So it's not even their choices. She doesn't even consider that her sons,
Yeah.
have made wrong choices.
Yeah. She feels as though it's just, it's their fate
Yeah.
that's been done
Yeah.
to them. You even
Yeah.
see it's so shocking after he kills Nadia at the end, and she says she almost like defends him, and
She does defend him.
and Cheeto is like, "Are you crazy?"
She
I mean,
absolutely
it's
does.
not
Yeah.
funny, but in a very
She
darkly
absolutely.
way,
Yeah.
it's kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but what an incredible performance from her as the mother, Katina Paxino.
She's Greek, so she was speaking
Yeah,
Greek the entire time. They were all mixed. You're right, mixed languages. In
yeah, you
French,
got French,
Italian, Greek.
Italian, Greek.
Mm-hmm.
They were from, I mean, which is very common in Italy. But I
Yes.
must say, this is probably, and I think I mentioned this to you when we last spoke. This to me is probably the best dubbed film I have ever seen,
It's
because
done
the,
really well.
the actors who did the dubbing are incredible. I just want to mention some of these people who, for Alain Delon, Aquile Milo. Oh my God! I mean, to go in, and as an actor how hard it is to dub something
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
such a truthful way. like every time I think of this film and I hear the shouting of him saying Simone to stop Simone from raping Nadia, I mean, Jesus Christ, it is so well done.
It was
Everybody,
so, yeah.
Valentino Fortunato was did the dubbing for Annie Giradot, who was
Um,
Nadia. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's not those actors
yeah,
speaking. It
it's
just
done
seems
really
like
well.
it's
Yeah,
like, wow, I don't think I've
very
seen a
well.
film dubbed this well.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely. And I would love
Yeah.
to know more about it because I was thinking about it while rewatching it. I hadn't thought about it the last 17 times I watched it, but rewatching it again for our talk, I was like, I had noted the same thing, and I'm glad you brought up their names because they really deserve
Oh my God.
recognition. Yeah, they
I
really
didn't
do.
know, you know, when I first saw this, see, I have it on DVD. I got this
Oh,
years ago. Like, this is 2010. I got it.
yeah.
So this is before the restoration.
Oh wow.
But and the quality is pretty good. I mean, I watched it again the last couple of times I've seen it. I watched it on the Criterion channel. Of course, it's, you know, it's spectacular. But even on this DVD, it's pretty good.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm not sure when this DVD came out, but it has been around. But like I said, I the only actor I knew was Delon,
Mhm.
and I didn't know much about him at all. But I just thought that was him talking. Like, I could
Yeah,
not believe that
so well
this
done.
that they were, because usually even in a really good film, you know, it's obvious that it's dubbed. But
Yeah.
wow, I
Yeah,
mean,
dubbing ruins so many films for me.
so
That's why
many.
I'm always like, give me original language, you know. So even with the, yeah, but even with subtitling too, sometimes it's you know, for to you know for the concision, is concision the word, for to be concise with subtitling, right? For the timing of the reading, sometimes they're not accurate of what
Yeah,
they say, but I
right.
actually prefer that to to most dubbing. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. It was great to give them recognition. They did a great
Oh
job.
yeah, yeah. No, no, absolutely. I was curious. You know, again, it's, you know, in a way, the film has a real simplicity, and in a lot of ways, it doesn't. But in a good way, of course. And what we see Nadia after she is raped, and Rocco says, you should be with Simone because he needs you. And she goes, never, never. And then in the next scene, she's, you know, they're all she's she's around him and the guys who are there, who like,
Uh-huh.
and they say, oh, you'll get over it. And you could see that she's, you know, this is when you start to see her demise as well. And you know, he tries to kiss her, and she says, never, I'll, you know, get away from me, I hate you. She spits in his face, and then suddenly he starts to kiss her, and they embrace, and then they're together. And I was wondering why you felt that she decided to do that.
I think there are a few reasons. You think I didn't think about it?
No, I know you thought about it.
Girl, what are you doing with that? You leave him, like shouting at the screen.
Yeah.
I know you know. Thank you for asking that. I think it's a few reasons. I actually wrote a note down here is that she's, you know, rape, not only the rape, but the buildup of it, her life,
Mm.
right? From age, not even from age 13, her entire life, right? But especially from her teen, you know, her entire life has been battle, survive, survive, survive. So then finally, how much are you supposed to take
Yeah.
before you lie down and go?
That's
And
what
she
I thought.
says when she and Rocco meet, right, at the station after his military service, and when she gets out of jail, she says, it's only going to be worse from here. Not because she has some kind of premonition, right? There's some supernatural instinct, but because she knows the conditions of her life. She knows what the life is for a woman like her. She knows that
Right.
there's, you know, the dream of having something good is unattainable,
Yeah.
right? Until she has that moment of hope. And I think that scene also has hope. So when the rape happens, And then the further devastation of losing, being abandoned by the second man in her life that was important to her, that actually, loved her, was supposed to love her. How much more are you supposed to take? So I think she's defeated, she's embittered, she's resigned. I think a little bit of it is spite towards Rocco.
Yeah.
Because she says to Rosaria, when she and Rosaria have the big explosive argument, she said, and you can tell Rocco,
yeah,
being here was what it amounted to nothing.
Yes.
How much pain. I mean, and then what an existence. It's like a dog's existence.
Yeah.
To be, she's again the whore.
Right.
When she had the hope to live a life, not only a normal life, but a life with that pure kind of love. Nobody in any socioeconomic situation, it is so rare to have that.
Yeah.
Let alone for someone in her socioeconomic position.
Right.
So when all hope is dashed, she doesn't want to die. She says at the end, I don't want to die. Right. She doesn't want to die. Maybe she still has hope, but it's not that she wants, and maybe she's punishing herself as well. I mean, rape has a big effect on people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can read, you can talk to, victims or survivors of rape. But what Simone has done to her all along, that, as you pointed out earlier, has been done to her entire life since she was 13, treated as an object to be used. Even at the end, she's with, the John.
Yeah.
Right? She's with her client.
Yeah.
Who is, okay, this is also toxic, the masculinity in our society. So he can be, quote unquote, a man to buy her, use her for sex, right? But is he a man when somebody's threatening her life? No, he runs away.
Yeah, when she's calling out to him to help her. And I was like, away. Oh, God.
So you can be a man to take possession of a woman as an object, man, right?
Yeah.
But one cannot be a man in caring for. And the only example we see of the caring for is Rocco, who's completely wrong.
Yeah. 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 It's so complicated, because like I was saying, Rocco he has such a good heart, and for him to want to help Simone, even though I think he largely hated him, even though he was helping him. I mean, you see when now he's becoming a rising boxer, and after he wins, there he is on the staircase crying, and they're like, hey, Cheeto's like, what's wrong? And he goes, I wasn't hitting the guy in the ring. He goes, he was like, he was putting his hatred in towards Simone and using that to win. And he's disgusted by Simone, but it's his duty, it's his responsibility to keep the family together at all costs. But
the sacrifice of throwing the stone.
Exactly. And Simone is so self-destructive that he's taking advantage of that, and then he's just doing worse and worse and worse things until it ends in murder and him getting arrested. And that scene at the end, wow. I mean, he comes after, we have these contrasting scenes where there's she's being murdered by Simone, and then on the other scene is Rocco, this biggest celebration and victory of his life. And now those two things merge, where Simone comes over and tells Rocco what happened. And even though Rocco is crying and screaming, no, how could you done this? He's stroking his cheek at the same time. It's like, and he still wants to help this guy. And I'm like, what are you doing? But I as someone who is Italian, and I'm not saying just Italians are like this, but I've seen, not that I've seen anyone defend a murderer and a rapist. I mean, obviously this is getting into
I have seen
melodrama.
people do that.
Yeah, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens. But just from my own experience, I've certainly seen, family put up with bad behavior from other family members because they feel you got to keep it together, or it's the peacekeepers, we have to just put up with it,
But I always say also, like, because that I've seen that, right, in immigrant situations, I always say, well, what was the point of immigrating if you were just going to be in your rural town here?
Yeah.
The behavior has to change.
Right.
You're not in the small town anymore.
Yeah.
Right? You've come to this place. But I have let's say the luxury of thinking about those things. People in those situations don't necessarily have the capacity or the training to be able to reflect like that and think objectively about their situation and then get out of it. You brought up something earlier about Ciro being the most intelligent, and the story is divided in 5 chapters, right? One per brother. Yes. And it's interesting that they didn't, it's subtle how it's transitioned, right? Because it's not like this kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? This kind of focus on the protagonist of each chapter. But Ciro, yes, he's the more intelligent. And I think also he's symbolic of the transition, right? Because Vincenzo goes first, and he's still trying to break out of the provincial situation and be the modern city dwelling man and have that new life. But he's, figuratively punched in the face with it. Ciro and Simone are still those provincial men, right? They can't help it. It's, but Ciro is of the age where he can come to the new place and assimilate and become that. And then when he forgets the dialect, this is what's happening, right? Yes. The family starting from him.
Yes.
He's the smart one because he's born that way, but also because he was young enough during their immigration.
That's right.
To be, to have the formative years shape his mind and outlook and opportunity.
That's a good point.
So he's the first of those. He's the first of the sons of the 5 fingers on a hand, as Visconti said. He's the first of the 5 to be able to be that.
Yeah. And I love the last image, which is hopeful in a way, even though it's such a tragic ending. But with Ciro, and he's wearing, he's you see him with the uniform, Alfa, what's that car company?
Alfa Romeo.
Yeah. And you see it written on his back in his uniform, and then him amongst all those men, of course, coming together and assimilating and going to work. So, I don't think Visconti is saying, oh yes, this is assimilating is great. I think he's just saying there are pros to cons always to these movements and to these changes, and it's very complicated.
But the final shot, I would love to know your take on this. The final shot of the film is the posters of Rocco saying Rocco Parondi to be fighting in, I think it was like United States, England, Shanghai. It lists like Spain. It lists like 4 or 5 countries. So the stone, right? The sacrifice made, the stone thrown at the shadow. He says, when after Simone confesses to Nadia, to having murdered Nadia, and Simone himself says it's over, but he means something else. He means a lot of things, but Rocco then says it's over. And he means probably overlaps. But I think they're two it's overs have different meanings. So
Right.
then Rocco, who's the titular character, right?
Yeah.
Is liberated, right? He really goes out.
Yeah.
He really leaves Lucania.
Right.
He really,
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
flight.
Yeah. That's what I took from it. It's like what's over is with Simone, and then I suppose with Simone, what he was saying, what's over is his relationship with her, or I don't know if he was talking about his whole life. Simone, like, my whole life is over. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's interesting, those lines, like it can mean so many things. Are you talking about just those lines or that last shot, like with all the posters?
Yeah, separately and together and leading up to that. I think Simone, as entitled as it is of him, but entitled and that brutish rural naivete, and the masculinity, the entitled masculinity, felt pain. I mean, Nadia caused him pain. He even says when Rocco comes to tell him that Nadia has sent him a message that she has to go away, he totally, first of all, he slut shames her. Oh, you know her too?
Right.
And then he says, well, I don't have time for a woman like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he was
a mature man doesn't say things like that.
Yeah. No, he was clearly totally in love. He totally,
I think maybe in love at first, but it develops into this sick, misogynist, objectifying obsession. Right.
Well, thanks so much again, Lucia, for taking the time to talk about this so in depth. I really appreciate that. And I love your passion for this film and your insight. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Where's the best place for people to follow you online or check out your show, your vegan show?
Oh, my vegan show, if you just Google Lucia's Vegan Lifestyle, everything comes up. The show airs on MNN, but you can find the the YouTube channel and all of the social media. And if they want to find out about my films, because as you know, I make films in Italy, narrative films that are, kind of close to, I call them neo-realist. They can go to calabrisellafilms.com.
Perfect. Great. I'll leave the links in the description box below for where, and those short films, by the way, are fantastic. And we talked about them last time. And yeah, you can check out her vegan show as well. And I'll leave the links in the description box below for where you can follow Lucia online. So Lucia, thanks again. Let's do it again sometime.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and or listening. If you are currently listening to this on the audio version of my YouTube channel and you've run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode that I've ever recorded can be found, youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. I also want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you are interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link, patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is bonus content created by me, and it is based on polls that I put out month in and month out, which you will have access to vote on, which will make you very much part of the decision-making as to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. And lastly, if this is your first time on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.